Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Russia continued their advancement in Chasiv Yar, but how successful that advancement really is? Well, we have the recent military map update, so it was yesterday and it is today. Clearly you may see that they have 3 vectors of advancement, but this update actually happened 2 days ago. The guys from the deep state military source have just received the information from the front lines. Actually, today Russia went on their assault, on their attack towards the Chasiv Yar and was demolished. We have even a proof of their unsuccessful attack. This video I will share on my Telegram channel. You may find it in the video description just below, and you see how huge kaboom really is in the Russian convoy. Russians concentrated around 15 of the vehicles. Half of them at least were captured by Ukrainian FPVs and artillery. The rest returned back. Also, Russian infantry suffered a lot. So today's mid-wave completely failed for the Russian army, but still they have 3 of the vectors of their attack. Definitely one directly towards this area of the Chasiv Yar, one through the Kalinovka village, also in direction of the Chasiv Yar, and one from Ivanovsk as well towards the town. It's interesting what spot Russia would use for their main strike direction, because they have to concentrate the forces for the major one, because there is a river in this area over here, so they need to cross it at some particular spot from what I think. On the south we have the Ivanovsk village. The fight for it still continues, but Russia is now bypassing the village, leaving some of the Ukrainian forces behind and going to the Chasiv Yar. Kind of interesting tactics, but maybe they're sure that the Ukrainian side doesn't have enough resources to counterattack them from Ivanovsk. Later in this video we're gonna return to the military map review. Now let's speak about the other topics. By the way, my friends, if you want to support the job that I do on YouTube daily, you may join my Patreon team with the link in the video description just below. Thank you so much for supporting my job. Great news, Russia lost one more air defense system. This time it is Boeing. It happened not far away from Avdiivka. Plus the Tor air defense system was HIMARSed in Zaporizhia direction. This picture shows the Ukrainian Sukhoi 27 fighter jet with a French-made gliding bomb. According to the previously obtained information, Ukraine receives around 50 of those gliding bombs monthly. Compared to the Russian gliding bombs, those are very precise and effective. Now we understand why demolishing the Russian air defense systems is so important task for Ukraine. We need to allow our aviation to work properly on the front lines. The United Kingdom is working to supply some of the prototypes of the laser air defense systems to Ukraine. Maybe the current conflict will be used as the polygon for the modern age weaponry. The situation in Robotyne for the Russian army. Recently their barracks were ambushed or HIMARSed, so relatives send the message that they are trying to search for their loved ones. Also, as you may see, Russia hires more and more foreigners to their army. Sometimes those are really not successful. This day, exactly 10 years ago, Russia started the active fightings against Ukraine in Donbass. They occupied Crimea before, but there was no massive shooting. But in Donbass they sent armed men, and Girkin Strelkov, you may see him over here, was in charge of that unit. They captured the administrative buildings of Slavyansk. Strelkov is not Ukrainian, he is from Moscow, as well as many other Russian managers with their units. All of that came from Russia. For long 8 years they said that it's not us, those are just Ukrainians, and later on they started a full-scale war against Ukraine, proving that it was definitely Russia that started this war. Later on, Slavyansk city was liberated by Ukrainian forces, and Girkin is now imprisoned in Russia itself. Russia showed a real attitude towards their heroes. One more combat image showing Bradley in operation. I'll share it on my Telegram channel too. So Bradleys are very effective against the Russian infantry. In this case, Russians didn't have some of the anti-tank tools to get rid of Bradley. So Bradley did its job perfectly. And this is the classical operation from our guys. This is the M113 with a turret on a top, so it approached the Russian trenches. The trenches are located over here. It opens direct fire from the turret. At the same time, Ukrainian infantry enters the Russian trenches from this direction, performing its job step by step and going all across the Russian trench. It's a real classic tactics. The Russian town of Orsk turns to Atlantida. Alright, some breaking news: Iran might strike Israel this night or in the coming hours. President Biden urgently calls Iran not to commence the strike on Israel because it will not solve their issues. Germany calls its citizens to leave Iran as soon as possible. Some of the Arab countries are calling their citizens to leave Israel instead. So as for me, the escalation is imminent and obviously Israel would respond on those attacks. You know, I heard from some of the news sources like BBC that it is the Israel to blame for this escalation because they ambushed Iranian generals in Damascus, but actually those generals were directly responsible for the Iranian proxies who were fighting against Israel. So for Israel, those were legitimate targets, directly involved in the war against Israel. They support Hamas, Hezbollah with weaponry, as well as Houthis, by the way. Houthis who disturbed the connections for the world trade in the Red Sea. So Israel did their best to eliminate that threat, and now they have a new one. Israel already said that they might target some of the nuclear stations of Iran if Iran targets Israel. Meanwhile, Iran says that they will strike Israel, but they will try to limit this attack, not to escalate it further. Hopefully Israel air defense would work fine in this case. And those pictures were shared by Iran showing their missiles and how they launched them against Israel. I guess this picture too. Donald Trump wanted Ukraine to be the part of Russia than he was a United States president. We have the statement from the Trump's former advisor Fiona Hill. She says it in her new book about United States national security under the threat from Russia and China. Donald Trump made it very clear that he thought, that Ukraine and certainly Crimea must be part of Russia. He really couldn't get his head around the idea that Ukraine was an independent state. Should we believe it? Well, Fiona Hill is ex-advisor of Donald Trump. She writes it openly. I think she could be sued for those words by Donald Trump if those are fake, but I think that Trump would not do it because it was a truthful statement of his when he was in office. I tend to believe Fiona Hill based on the current Trump's rhetorics, that he wants to trade Ukrainian territory as exchange for some term peace. So if Trump becomes a next United States president, it is absolutely no-go for Ukraine. Ukraine has the plans for the counterattack in 2025 if it obtains all of the required resources to do it. This year, obviously, the counterattack is not possible. Just maybe some sort of the operation in Crimea, that's it. I mean the landing operation which Ukraine might do using limited resources. Why the counteroffensive of Ukraine could be possible? Because Russia is losing lots of the armored vehicles and tanks. We have the report from Forbes that Russia might lose the advantage in the armored vehicles in 2025 if they continue to use those in their mid-wave attacks. They are simply unable to produce armored vehicles and tanks that fast to cover their losses. Ukraine in a current position in defense really demolishes the Russian army. As for the recent losses for the last 5 days, Russia lost 403 of the vehicles, Ukraine 101. Here we see the losses for each day, and Russia continued to lose lots of the armored vehicles. It's just crazy, those losses are dramatic. What Ukraine really needs right now are the air defense systems. The negotiations are ongoing between Ukraine and our allies to provide those systems as soon as possible. For the recent time, Germany supplied 2 of the launchers to Ukraine, but it is not enough. Unfortunately for this day, there is no robust partner who would supply many of the launchers or systems to Ukraine. But as I say to you, the negotiations are ongoing. I know that yesterday there were some of the news that the European Parliament will stay out of the finances until Ukraine obtains Patriot systems, but it is nothing more than political theater, because we're speaking about the budget of 2022. So money has already been spent for financing, and all of that is just a political theater. I agree with that. But the European parliamentaries, MPs, play their political games, taking the war in Ukraine to improve their social credit. The self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Lukashenko, was asked the question whether Belarus is planning to participate the war against Ukraine on the Russian side. Well, Lukashenko answered that the border with Belarus is mined by Ukrainian soldiers, and Ukraine concentrated quite a lot of the forces, more than 120,000 troopers. So joining this war on the Russian side is quite a bad idea, Belarus dictator said. But he provided his territory for the Russian army, and I believe that he might do it again. The Telegraph says that without the military support, Ukraine would have to go to the Dnieper River, leaving the half of the country for Russians. Well, the Telegraph just says nonsense over here. Even without the military support, it's not possible, because Russia doesn't have the huge resource to break through Ukrainian defense lines. But the articles like this one might raise more awareness about the situation in Ukraine, that Ukraine should obtain military support right now. Otherwise, we'll see dramatic circumstances. Well, not that dramatic as they say, but anyways. Well, I think that this situation is actually possible, but only because of the internal collapse of the Ukrainian army and in general of Ukrainian management. So some big crisis should happen inside Ukraine. For Russia, it's the only variant possible. But nevertheless, Russia has the advancement. Let's go to the Avdiivka direction, Tenenke. Unfortunately, yes, Russia advanced, taking all of this territory, many of the fields and forest lines. The only village that stays under Ukrainian control in this place is Yasnobrodivka. But from what we see, it will be captured for sure in the nearby future. Ukraine needs more military resources to repel the Russian attacks. According to the latest information, Mike Johnson is negotiating with the White House some sort of the new military deal for Ukraine, which might not be supported by Republicans as well as Democrats. So we have the current bill, but they hesitate to put it for voting. Kind of the strange politician game in the United States, I would say, but we have what we have. Ukraine just can't do anything about this case.
Everybody from around the world to come here, including hardened criminals,
Donald Trump says that Speaker Johnson does a great job. He's doing a good job. Yeah, obviously he postpones the military support for Ukraine, so for Donald Trump it is absolutely awesome. But nevertheless, I'm sure that Ukraine will be supported by the United States of America in any sort of this scenario. Just need to wait for it more, unfortunately. My friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.